Hey guys, Ruminating Reaper here. So I've just finished watching Enola Holmes 3 on Netflix. The film is directed by Philip Barantini, director of Boiling Point and Adolescence, who is taking over directing duties from Harry Bradbeer, director of the first two films. The film is also written by Jack Thorne, the writer of Adolescence, who is adapting the book series by Nancy Springer for the screen, which of course is drawn from the original works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, look, I very much enjoyed the first two Enola Holmes films, and obviously, yes, I was looking forward to watching this third one. Especially with the Adolescence team at the helm, I was really hoping their fresh, creative perspective would make this a satisfying and roundly entertaining trilogy. But does the pedigree of the film's creative team make for a satisfying trilogy closer? Let's find out. So in the film, Enola Holmes is due to get married to Viscount Tewkesbury in a wedding ceremony taking place in Malta. However, right as Enola is about to actually walk the aisle, Dr. John Watson, the companion of her brother, the great Sherlock, comes to her bearing grave news that the great detective has been kidnapped. And so, teaming up with Watson and Tewkesbury, Enola sets about piecing together the clues left behind by Sherlock in order to find him and rescue him. But she soon discovers that this new case may be linked to an old foe. So, as Netflix originals go, the Enola Holmes series has actually been fairly enjoyable. But I'm kind of disappointed to say that this third installment is a bit of a step down compared to the first two films. Like, don't get me wrong, it is still a decent film, but given the Adolescence team was behind this one, yeah, I kind of expected a lot more from it. So, admittedly, the story does take a little bit to actually get going because, there's a lot of flashbacks and recaps to scenes from the first two films, but it also very much spends a lot of time filling us in on bits of backstory that happened in the time between films 2 and 3. And so there's very much a lot of, going backwards to get the audience up to speed before the story can actually properly move forwards. But once it does get going, the central mystery here is fairly entertaining and easy to watch. Obviously, it does that very satisfying thing that like all Sherlock adjacent media does, where we very much sort of see the analytical mind at play, very much piecing together all these clues and bits of evidence like a jigsaw puzzle. It's very satisfying seeing Enola do this stuff in the first two films, and it's very satisfying to see her do it again here. And the film, in its second half, actually takes that mystery in a fairly interesting direction and plays around with that sort of Holmes family analytical mind, playing around with it in a, well, not quite subversive way, in a way that is very surprising and, unexpected, and very much plays around with, what we'd expect from this kind of story. It is very fun to watch. Although the actual overarching mystery itself is kind of predictable, particularly in regards to who is actually behind it all. In fact, the opening scene of the film straight up kind of tells us, like, so rather than being on this journey at the same time as Enola piecing all these clues together with her, we're very much left waiting for her to get to the point where the audience is at, for her to find out what we already know, which is kind of a shame. But it is still fairly entertaining and easy viewing. It's to its credit, though, of the writing that that we are very much able to stay invested, because obviously we do have that central emotional core in the Enola Tewkesbury relationship and sort of where she is at and sort of her conflict in potentially giving up her freedoms in becoming a lady. It's very interesting stuff, and once again, Millie Bobby Brown and Lewis Partridge do have that fairly easy chemistry to sell their likable and charming dynamic, even if at times some of Millie's acting can be a bit wooden and labored, particularly when she's trying to do big emotional moments and trying to be tough and get answers out of potential suspects. But still, their relationship is very likable, and their chemistry is charming and very much there. And so that very much drives a lot of it, and very much keeps us invested in it. There's also some kind of interesting themes at play here. A very critical look at British imperialism in countries like Malta. It doesn't go as deep as you'd expect it to, but there is a very interesting idea at play here, and it does explore it quite well to an extent. But unfortunately, the directing here, doesn't have that sort of flair you'd expect from Barantini's other work. There's no sort of cool, unbroken takes at play here. It very much feels kind of pedestrian and very much trying to mimic the style of the first two films. And don't get me wrong, the flourishes here on display are charming to watch as ever. All the sort of newspaper clippings and pop-up displays, and even the sort of little sketches for the little clues. It is all still very fun to watch, but I feel like Barantini's perspective really could have added something fresh to it that just never really arrives. It also kind of struggles tonally. Don't get me wrong, it is fairly funny and does have those quite satisfying emotional moments. But it's also trying to be a little bit darker, and it does it well enough. But the sort of quirky, quick-witted, funny stuff never quite fully gels with the darker stuff as well. It never fully hits that balance, much as it admirably tries to. Although I think what makes it mostly work are the performances around Millie Bobby Brown and Lewis Partridge. Himesh Patel brings a lot of charm to Dr. Watson. In fact, he does get some of the film's best scenes. He's quite funny, and also has some of the film's best emotional moments, particularly a little heart to heart he shares with Tewkesbury late on in the film. He's really, really good. There's also some very good moments from Helena Bonham Carter as Enola and Sherlock's mother. She's once again quite funny and does have some satisfying emotional moments with Enola. And once again, Henry Cavill is great as Sherlock. Unfortunately, the nature of the story and his role within it means he is largely left to the sidelines. But when he gets his chance to shine, he really does. He really, once again, sells the quick-witted detective thing effortlessly. And he also has a bit of fun channeling sort of Sherlock's, insecurities and vulnerabilities as we kind of see what makes him tick as well. He's really, really good. And honestly, him and Patel need their own proper standalone Sherlock and Watson film. I'd watch it. It'd probably be really, really good. Something that kind of surprised me here is the notes of finality that they actually approached this one with. They very much approached this as the close of a trilogy and potentially of the Enola Holmes story. And as a trilogy closer, it actually is fairly satisfying. It hits those emotional beats very well, and they do actually work. And honestly, and yeah, left me very satisfying with the sense of closure that they give to these characters. And honestly, yeah, if this is the end, I'm fairly happy with it. Although seriously, give Henry Cavill his own Sherlock Holmes film now. Overall, Enola Holmes 3 is a decent little mystery film, but definitely doesn't reach the heights of its two predecessors, thanks to a fairly safe and predictable story, and a lack of the usual vision that you'd expect from the Adolescence creatives. But it all works thanks to its charming and very likeable cast of characters. Out of 10, Enola Holmes 3 gets a 6.5. So, let me know down in the comments, have you seen Enola Holmes 3? What did you think of it? What did you make of it in comparison to the first two films of the trilogy? Did you think the Philip Barantini flair got to shine through here? And would you like to see Henry Cavill get his own Sherlock Holmes film? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you are new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.